Hi, everyone. My name is Sebastian. I'm Director of Startup and Corporate Success at Factory Berlin, and I would like to welcome you to our very first hybrid event, actually. So we are taking the online world back to the offline world. I'm happy to see a few faces in the audience. No, I don't have a camera up front, but I can see your heads from the back. My team and I, actually, we are building bridges as we are connecting our startups and corporate team members within Factory Berlin, of which we have Audi, Porsche, Coca-Cola, Decathlon on the corporate side, amongst others, but also startups like Unbounce, Plan A, Finanzfluss, or the just recently joined mobility wunderkind Bolt, who will start their German operation from within Factory Berlin. I had the chance to work with the Building Bridges program and the RuhrLAB, and I was able to facilitate the stakeholders and help them to develop the program, of which Frederick will report how it is set up. So I was working from the sidelines, helping to set up the program, helping to pick the startups, and I was also able to bring master classes towards the startups, one of which was held by our corporate team of McKinsey, and the other one was done by Mermaid Studios by Hester, which you will get also will get to know during the panel, which will follow very soon. Without much further ado, I'm handing over to Frederick, and I wish all of you an interesting evening.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. The presentation of your own role has been absolutely wrong. You've not been standing on the sidelines, if I may correct that. You've been crucial to the success of this batch. So thank you very much for that. And thank you very much to the entire factory team for facilitating this Building Bridges program in the first batch, as we say. The first batch that we are closing today, which has been focused on medtech companies. So if I just step back, my name is Frederick. I'm from the RAG Stiftung. We initiated this Building Bridges program because we thought that we wanted to bring the best of Berlin startups in contact with the powerful networks that we have access to in the Ruhrgebiet, the region where the RAG Foundation has its home base. So we've set up this program with a view that we would facilitate the dialogue between startups based here in Berlin and the networks based in the Ruhr. We have a physical space here in Factory Berlin, which is not being used as much as we would have liked it to be used, simply because of bloody Corona. I hope that the next batch, stay tuned for what it will be focused on, will get a chance to use that space more. As I just hinted upon, the perspective here is to have a further batch and a further few batches that will be focused on different topics. So look out for the shout-outs that we will, the call-outs that we will channel through Factory out there for startups to receive the benefit of being part of the Building Bridges program. If we look back, so what has happened is that there's been this interaction between networks and startups, and there have been a few masterclasses, and I hope we can build upon that success for the next batches. Today, we will have a panel that would be moderated by Hester from Mermaid Studios, and with three gentlemen that represent different facets of successful startup work in medtech. So we'll hear an entrepreneur, we'll hear an M&A advisor, a financing advisor that will summarize the investor's perspective, and a company builder that will distill their best advice to how to build a medtech startup. But I think many of the lessons they will share, I'm sure, will be valid to other sectors. So welcome to this event. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining in person and virtually. I hope you have an enjoyable time. Hester, over to you. Hester from Mermaid Studios.
Awesome, thank you so much for the introduction. So before getting started, of course, I want to introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Hester. I've been a Factory member for the past 3 years, and Sebastian and team has asked me to moderate the panel today. So what Mermaid Studio does is we are a user experience agency, and we focus on building digital products. And while doing that, we always focus on making sure that the user is really in the center of the process. And of course, this panel today is focusing on healthcare. We also have built some interesting healthcare products, so I'm very, very keen on the smart people on stage today who can shine some light on the healthcare sector. And I'm giving my best to give a little bit of an introduction to each and every one of you. So, and I think the theme of today will be, and I will use a quote from Fast Company because I think it's really suitable and fitting, because when we build products, we always try to quickly build MVPs, right? We want to build prototype, we want to build prototype and make them fail so we can learn. That's at least our approach. But how do you do that in healthcare when there's people involved, right? When there's patients involved. So this is definitely something we want to shine some more light on today. And Fast Company said, in this environment, tech's move fast and break things model can actually become move too quickly and break your company. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more about. And first of all, I would like to welcome on stage Hendrik. Hendrik, you can come up here right now. Hendrik Jandl is part of Founders Intelligence, and what Frederick said, they are basically consulting powered by entrepreneurs. And Hendrik himself is also a Factory Berlin member, and he leads client engagement in the German market and has worked on incubating new ventures in the UK as well as in the Netherlands and in Germany. And before joining FE, Hendrik worked for a Berlin-based venture capital fund, and as an entrepreneur in residence for a fast-growing SaaS startup. I hope that was right.
That was right, yeah.
And I've covered everything, so welcome, Hendrik.
Great to be here.
Awesome. And next, somebody from the startup scene, Frank Baier. from Fasciotens. I've learned how to pronounce that name. It wasn't so easy. So basically what Frank is doing, he used to be an orthopedic surgeon and trauma surgeon as well, who now co-founded his company in 2016 based on an innovative therapy for the abdomen. And yeah, he did that in 2016, and then they gained big funding round in 2018, I think, and since then he really dedicated all his heart and passion to his company. So welcome on stage, Frank.
Thanks, Esther.
And next we have Jan. Please come on stage. Jan Zua Hausen. His company, which he founded, is called Bergmann, Zua Hausen and Zie. And they basically advise on strategy, transactions, and equity, as well as valuation within the healthcare sector. Biotechnology, diagnostics, medical technology, and pharmaceuticals. So basically, they know the numbers when it comes to healthcare, to sum that up.
We better do, yes.
Awesome, cool. Welcome on stage. And then we should have Emily on the screen. Can anyone confirm that? So we have another panelist, I assume. Yes, no? Then I think we'll just continue, and if Emily pops up, then we're going to introduce her as well. Okay, cool. So we have about 25 minutes just to basically set the scene, and most of you guys are actually founding their own company in the healthcare industry, so I think these guys can really give an awesome perspective. And we want to start out by just maybe talking about what's special about the healthcare sector. And I talked a little bit about, building products in any kind of industry. What's special about the healthcare sector? Maybe Hendrik, your 2 cents on that.
Sure. So, as you said, I was involved in a couple of corporate incubation projects. One was in the UK, where we tried to build a patient remote management platform and try to sell that to the NHS, which is the kind of public healthcare system in the UK. And what we have found very difficult, and I'm sure nobody's surprised, is selling something to public to any public sector company or public sector organization, but especially in healthcare, is really, really complicated. And I think one of the main reasons is that if you look at other markets, normally the customer is also the person who holds the budget. But in healthcare, that's not the case at all. You have the patient, who you can see as the customer, but the budget is actually being held by a public healthcare system, for example, the NHS. So you actually have 2 different parties that you have to engage with, and you can work as much as you can on really emphasizing the user, emphasizing how the patient will interact with your tool, but in the end you have to convince somebody else to pay for it. And that makes it, for me, very unique and more difficult probably than other sectors.
So how do you enhance that collaboration between those different parties?
Well, what we've learned when we did that was basically you have to convince the NHS that your tool is 10 times better than what they're currently using, and even then it's very, very difficult to get them to approve your budget. I'm not going to go into details on the NHS because it's obviously a much different system than in Germany, but basically what you also said before is you can't just test something in market and then hope for the best. But still you have to create evidence. So how we did that in the healthcare space was by creating clinical studies, and that's a much different kind of approach to building products than what we usually know from startups, where you just launch something, have some people interact with it and then learn from that. It's taking years, it takes much more budget, much more commitment, and yeah, that's why it's really, really hard to build in the public healthcare system.
Thanks, Hendrik. Frank, your 2 cents.
Yeah, actually, I would just underline some of the sentences Henrik just has mentioned, because I think, or even as you said in the beginning, it's something we always have to think about, is that we're treating people, we're treating human beings. So that's a big difference in developing a product. Of course, it has to be a lot more developed than maybe I don't know, a simple new smartphone app or something like this. And this is what it makes a lot slower more expensive and more responsible to develop a new pharmaceutical or medical device, or even some of the new healthcare applications. I think they, to a certain extent, they are also facing the same problems. And maybe I'd like to add one more sentence to what you said, Henrik, about the customers, because the customer perspective is something very, it's something very awkward, I think, because we've got it's even more difficult because the patient, of course, is in a way the person who receives your product, but the person who treats you, this has also changed a lot because the physicians themselves, they don't even take the economical decisions any longer. So that was maybe easier a few, let's say a few decades ago. They had a lot more possibilities to decide on products and to try something new, and maybe to take even the more expensive product. This is something that has completely changed, I think, in today's healthcare business.
So to add on that, so what does an MVP look like in the healthcare sector?
I don't know. It's too difficult because my perspective always is very surgery driven, of course, and so that's something. I think real surgical devices are not very innovative. There are not many innovations, and a lot of Me Too products and pseudo innovations coming up there. I don't know. If I know it, maybe I'll do my business first and then I tell you.
Yeah, but I mean, you have developed a device, right? Yeah. So how did you approach developing that? What was your first MVP, like the minimum viable product where you said, okay, I'm going to take the next step. It's working and I want to proceed with it?
Yeah. As I said, it's from our perspective, it would have been possible to market this device without any trials, even because we're a Class 1 product, and that's why I said this perspective is maybe a bit surgery driven, because we had it, we made it a lot more. We tried to do it as safe as possible. So what we did is doing some animal testing on cadaveric studies, then some live animals, and afterwards that was like the first step to prove the concept really, and then we went on to developing this device in the most in the safest way we could, and I think it's a point you have to really decide product by product.
Oh, we have Emily on board. Hi, Emily. Can you hear us?
Hi, everyone. I've never seen my face so big before. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so gonna take a little break here, and I'm gonna introduce real quick Emily. So Emily is the COO and the co-founder of Intrepida, a health tech focused startup, basically focusing on clinical trials. And what they have also developed is an AI, which is called Incorrea AI, and it's an online platform that really helps patients and healthy volunteers to search for, match with, and connect to clinical trials for treatment, diagnostics, and vaccines that will help to stop the COVID pandemic. And also, in addition to that, Emily is a Factory Berlin member. She is also a participant of this program, the Building Bridges program, and she's also mentoring in the Factory Stealth Mode program for female founders and female identifying founders. So welcome to the panel, Emily. We've already started, but I'll just continue and then basically ask you some more questions as well. Okay, so Jan.
My 2 cents. Well, you already heard healthcare is incredibly complex, and there's so many different aspects to it. At the end of the day, there's the patient. One thing that you just mentioned, even within Europe, I mean, UK is not Europe anymore. You have different regulatory issues to address. And there's so many different parts in healthcare, be it diagnostics, be it medical devices, therapeutics, where you need completely different amounts of money in order to move forward, and different clinical trials to prove your product. So these are many things you need to consider when you do an investment or you set up a company. So to make it really short, healthcare is complex, and probably without wanting to advertise myself, Frank is a surgeon, I'm an immunologist by training and then went into business. So it really helps to have a scientific, at least a basic scientific understanding in order to be able to judge these things and have a broad feel in regards how long it takes. And there will be many drawbacks, particularly if you develop therapeutics, but in all the other spaces as well. So it's just a very complex topic.
So what would you say is particularly special when it comes to the startup's value proposition in the health tech or med tech sector?
What do you mean by value proposition? I mean, obviously you have some kind of idea that you need to develop where you will help somehow a patient. So, and as you said, it has to be 10 times better than what is on the market already, or probably there's nothing else so far. So that really depends, and then you look at the market that you address and the medical need, and then you take it from there. But I thought it was interesting when you mentioned earlier, fail early. I mean, the question is, how do you fail? Yeah, because patients are dying or your product is not working. So that makes healthcare even more complex. Yeah. And so all the process until you have a product or some kind of product, you have to go through so many different, let's say, little trials, be it you check with cells, animals, and so forth before you enter the patient. It's just incredibly complex and expensive. So it's tough to say when or what, but you have to have a basic idea, know where you're going and where you actually add value, and then you take from there. And you better fail fast without having people dying.
That's a very good advice. Thanks, Jan. Okay, Emily. Next topic what I would like to talk a little bit about is credibility and trust in the healthcare sector. So how can digital health entrepreneurs prove that their product or service is really credible and trustworthy? And I know that your product has to do with lots of data, so you're using lots of patients' data in the clinical trial work. So how can you make sure that people trust your product?
Sure, I think this is a really important challenge, definitely for our company, but for any company working in health. I think from the patient perspective, there's a huge element of trust, especially when dealing with pharmaceutical companies, given some of the reputation and people see it in the news. And there's a big challenge to overcome there. From our perspective, what we've done with Incorrea is work really closely with patients, patient advocacy groups, and organizations to try to build that trust and try to really communicate that our product is unbiased, independent, and comprehensive. So we're not kind of supporting one particular pharma company, but offering clinical trial search results across kind of the playing field for all patients. But I think in terms of data security, being in Germany has a strong advantage with kind of the GDPR regulations and the requirements for handling data, especially medical data and patient data. So being based in Berlin kind of strengthens that side of our value proposition for sure. And in particular in the US, I think that carries weight already as well. So there are a few considerations, but what I would say is to be transparent when communicating with your users about how their data is used. And to try to build that trust actually directly with the patient, that kind of contributes to a good user experience, but also contributes to the trust element as well.
Awesome. Hendrik, is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe also from a venture capital perspective, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, but I think it always helps to have somebody in the founding team who is a scientist or healthcare professional. If you don't have that, if you have an MBA from WHU and you have a crazy idea, that's great, but then make sure you build a medical advisory board for the first thing you do, basically, because that's how you create trust towards investors and also towards anybody who you interact with in the public healthcare system.
Awesome.
Meanwhile, you should never forget that all the medical experts are medical experts. So and the art really is to get the financing part and the science part together and to have some kind of realistic view on things. And that's usually going into the budget and the costs and everything. So scientists can do everything, and it's great, and they lose the financial aspect of it. And that's really the art of combining these kind of things. And this is why I actually like approaches like Frank's here, where being a surgeon, actually developing your skill there, your instrument and whatever it is, the device, and still being able to grasp the financial impact of everything. And that's actually important.
Awesome. So you've talked earlier a little bit about the gatekeepers, that there's lots of stakeholder involved who can make or break the process or can make it easier. So if you'd had a wish to improve that collaboration, what would that be? What would make your guys' life so much easier and really accelerating a health tech or med tech startup?
Okay, I think it's up to me. It's a very difficult question because, of course, there are plenty of things which make your life very difficult to place a new product. And I think it's changing over time because, of course, in the beginning, your major topic will be to get some adequate funding and to get these things done. Afterwards, it's your let's say your basic license, your CE certification, or your approval from the authorities. So I think it changes over time, and the most difficult thing is to keep up with this. So maybe. To answer your question a bit more general, I think the most challenging thing is to foresee which is the next big hurdle to take. So, and just to see, okay, that's what will come up maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, and I get this prepared as early as possible.
So how do you do that?
I don't know. Yeah, of course it's difficult to see that, but sometimes it's if you make a bit a plan where you want to go. If you've got clear goals and you really know where to get, you will be able to break it down to certain steps, and then you can, in a limited way, foresee certain things. Of course, nobody can really predict the future, but at least it makes it a bit more possible to get the timelines done and to get the next important gatekeeper overwhelmed.
Yeah.
If I might add a little bit, I think it's really important to have the right people on board, to find the right people. I mean, as you say, you go through different stages of the development of a company. I guess that's with other startups as well. But you need to have the right people on board who foresee these kind of hurdles in order to address them. Clearly, you want to have the money and everything, but you need to have the experience and the expertise on board. So finding those guys and girls is.
So how do you find them though? What advice would you give to the startups?
It's a lot about network, and I think I learned my lessons, and I really learned them when things really blew up. So in a way, I mean, I've been in the industry now for really quite a while. That really helps. So when things blow up, then you better fail fast, but it depends on how you do it.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But nevertheless, to have experienced guys somehow, be it on the board or God knows what, or have them as advisors, helps you to foresee these kind of things, because you can't. I mean, obviously he's focusing on certain things, and others he simply has no idea yet. Yeah. So you just want to make sure that you address those issues that potentially will come up. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I agree.
I can also add that in the case of the UK, they have the NHS has an innovation body called NHSX, and going through the NHSX helps you kind of really finding out what are the next steps to get your product approved, what are the next steps to get a clinical trial going, and so on. I don't know how it works in Germany, to be honest, but I'm sure that a lot of countries have similar sort of innovation bodies, and going through them can be really helpful.
So you kind of have a standard manual that you can run through.
If it exists, yeah, and they're not perfect at all. Like they have their flaws as well, but definitely getting involved with them can't hurt.
Okay. So because I think it's super interesting for the startups and the program is how do they get investment, right? So Jan, I want to talk a little bit more about investment. How does an investor really think that invests in health tech or med tech?
Well, that's a good question, whether he thinks. Yes, I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, you want to make money as an investor. So you need to be aware of which areas are probably no-go areas, and be it a therapeutic indication and so forth. So there are certain indications that you probably don't want to touch because it's just going to take forever. So these kind of things. But if you have an idea, if you have a project, I mean, obviously you need to summarize it somehow in a pitch and then get it across. I guess just like we will see in a couple of minutes. And the art is really, and again, this is why it's good to have a network of people who can connect you to other investors and say, hey, this is interesting, or they all tell you it's a piece of crap and stop it. That certainly helps. I mean, these are easy advices.
Give me like an example. I want to know an example. What's like the most attractive healthcare, like is it like what you just said? What's therapeutic is like less attractive? Maybe what would be like really attractive?
It all has a downside and upside. Yeah, if you have a successful therapeutic, the upside is probably gigantic. Yeah? Meanwhile, and Emily can assist. I'm sure she can confirm that. It takes forever. It's really expensive, so you need to see. Medical devices are easier. Let's say shorter. It's easier to from the clinical trials and everything. If you go into the diagnostics, for example, developing a diagnostic test and looking for the relevant numbers and see how many tests you do until you can get it approved. That's a completely different story. So it really depends also on your horizon of risk and time, what you have, and how much money you want to spend. Yeah, and you should always be aware as an investor in life science companies, it always takes more than you really want.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Emily, do you want to share a little bit more about investment from the startup perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So I think from the startup perspective, one great thing about being in health as opposed to another industry is the opportunity for equity-free grant funding, which is something that our company has benefited from because the timelines are longer and because there is kind of a plus for society as a whole to develop these kinds of ventures. Having this kind of investment that's equity-free is really, really useful, because it takes a long time to validate a product. So I think that's something that every health focused company should try to take advantage of, especially sort of pre-seed to get their feet before they seek kind of traditional venture capital. And the other thing I'll say is, I think just from the startup perspective, I mean, we speak to a lot of different kinds of investors, some of which are very general and some of which are very health focused. And I think the challenge is, when we are talking to people outside of health who don't have this level of expertise, who aren't scientists, it's often very difficult to explain why sales cycles are so long, why development takes so long, how the validation process works. And so there's also a real benefit in trying to zero in on those people who really already speak that language. So teams that are bioscience focused, especially in the venture space, are a little bit rare, usually pretty small, but they'll have people who really understand the science, and that's really, really important. I would look for that, especially if you're doing something more on the therapeutic side.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so closing question, because I think we are almost out of time, and given the current situation of COVID, what changes did you make in your strategy because of COVID? Crisis versus opportunity.
May I get started? My prediction here is that although it probably takes a little bit longer than I thought, with the crisis, that valuations will actually come down all across the regions, be it healthcare and other areas as well. Others are holding up pretty well, but I believe long term that's at least an opportunity for a life science investor. Because valuations were, at least from my view, way too high in order to make money. So that's certainly an opportunity. For me personally, I'm traveling less, so that's great. But so you can do a lot of stuff online, but that's basically it. But in the big picture of things, things will become less expensive, at least from my point of view.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Frank.
Yeah, I think this is maybe a very good point, because I think many people have really seen that maybe not all the meetings are necessary, not all the business trips are absolutely inevitable. So that's maybe a point. But for us, maybe the most challenging point is to adapt our sales strategy, because sales is something, especially for, of course, talking for our business and for surgical devices, is something which is happening on fairs, on medical congresses, and also in the hospital. So it's a lot about talking directly to the user, and this is something which you cannot really replace by a Zoom meeting. I mean, okay, it works fine today, but it's definitely something that's difficult to overcome, and therefore I hope that some of these restrictions will disappear soon, but of course we'll have to see and wait.
Yeah. Hendrik, what about you? What were like the biggest challenges or opportunities that you've seen in your guys' ventures?
Yeah, I think compared to last year when we were working on a telehealth company, I think this is going to be a major accelerator for telehealth in general, hopefully. I'm an optimist, but let's see. I think there's more willingness to invest in these kinds of solutions, also from a corporate perspective. Corporates are looking to get into healthcare, even if they're not traditionally healthcare providers. We've seen that in the recent couple of months. Yeah, so I'm just really hoping that it's going to boost telehealth as a general area.
Yeah. Yeah, just from my experience, we've in the past half year, we've built 2 digital therapy platforms for customers, and one of them literally called me and was like, we've got to launch a month earlier when everything started. So for me, I saw, like, especially in the therapy, online therapy, a huge opportunity to really move forward quicker.
Yeah, and then maybe just to add one more thing, I think mental health as an area is going to accelerate massively because this is a crisis and people have to deal with it. So
yes, definitely. Emily, what about you?
Yeah, in terms of challenges, I could probably talk all day about the last few months. It's been a pretty crazy time. I think one I would highlight, just being kind of pre-seed, seed stage, for female founders, especially in the deep tech space where they're few and far between, it's made it difficult to think about fundraising because you lose the face-to-face element of meetings. And so that's been a key challenge that we've tried to work around and change our plans and also apply for more grant money, et cetera, to try to kind of prolong the runway as long as possible. And I think that's a strategy a lot of companies are using. But in terms of opportunities, I think there have also been really great ones. So for our company, core part of our vision is around diversity and improving diversity in medical research. And I think alongside the pandemic and with all the challenges of the virus, you've also seen a new conversation about health equity and inequalities in healthcare. That to us is really exciting because that's a conversation that wasn't really mainstream previously and now is getting a lot of traction, and it's very important to the work that we're doing. So we're really positive about that.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. It's been an interesting time with you guys. So I think I would close the panel up now, and we can start with the pitches from the startups. And the panelists and myself, we're gonna judge the pitches, and also we'll ask some questions. So I'll hand over to Charlotte. Yes, awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It's super exciting to have you here. My name is Charlotte. I'm our events programming manager. I would want to give one last round of applause to our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for your insights. It's super exciting to have you back for our first hybrid format. I know it's still very strange times. You'll see I'm sanitizing this mic as we speak. So we also have people joining us online and in person. Our first pitch is actually one of our panelists, Emily. So if we could get Emily back on screen. And like Hester said, so our panelists will be providing feedback on the pitches for the startups that are pitching today. All of the startups have 5 minutes to pitch and then 5 minutes to answer questions. You're also able to ask questions as an audience member, either in person or online. So I'll linger around and I can sanitize and grab a mic and ask you a question. Otherwise, if you're online, we have Slido. So the code on Slido is, one second. The code on Slido is 50662. So again, 50662. So if you have any questions for the startups, please add it on Slido or just put your hand up in the audience and I will come to you. With that, Emily, can you hear me? Are you ready?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Amazing, Emily.
Perfect.
So you have 5 minutes. So go ahead and start.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm back again very soon. Thank you for having me. As mentioned, I'm the COO and co-founder of Intrepid Analytics, and our product is called Incorrea AI. I wanted to just start with a little thought experiment, actually. So if everyone can just take a moment to imagine that you've just received a diagnosis. Unfortunately, you have cancer. And just think about what that would mean in a time like right now in the middle of a global unprecedented pandemic. So this is something that many of our users are dealing with at this very moment. And I wanted to highlight a little bit of what that experience is like. So this quote is actually from one of our users yesterday. And she says, "It is impossible to plan next steps in treatment due to delays and the unknown. The oncologist's office feels different. Time is limited, even more than usual." This is someone living with breast cancer in the US. And I think it just really perfectly captures how coronavirus has taken what was already a really terrible thing, having cancer and trying to figure out what to do, and made that problematic patient experience even worse. We were actually working on this problem prior to the pandemic and really trying to think about how we can improve patient experiences. And the approach that we originally took was by thinking about how to involve more patients and a more diverse set of patients in clinical research to gain early access to innovative treatments. This has been a really difficult time for cancer patients in particular, because of the kind of things that this patient mentioned and for other reasons. But we've also seen a lot of hope during this time from our perspective as a startup, because the pandemic has also accelerated change in the industry and really spurred digitization in a way that previously was not anticipated for kind of many years to come. And we see this as a chance to really drastically improve patient centricity of healthcare using innovative digital tools. So the solution that we've built to address this issue of the patient experience is called Incorrea AI. And it's the digital connector between patients and healthcare stakeholders using NLP, or natural language processing, which is a form of AI, as the translation engine. And I think this platform really addresses some of the challenges with the pandemic, but also beyond in healthcare. We've launched 2 modules so far, one for patients and one for physicians. And these both focus on the clinical trials aspect that I already highlighted. So improving accessibility and unlocking clinical trial information to those who were previously unable to access this due to lack of expertise, and importantly for physicians, lack of time. So AI, our approach using AI really allows people for the first time, both on the patient side and on the healthcare professional side, to have this information at their fingertips and action it to connect more patients to clinical trials. We're rapidly expanding our platform to cover other points in the patient journey as well. For example, via telemedicine, which is booming right now, e-consent, and also patient experience sharing. Our team came together to work on this problem because we share deep history working in healthcare of collective more than 30 years of experience, and we've really seen the challenges for patients and physicians up close in this space. Our experience spans AI, so Danielle has a deep experience for the past 10 years working in healthcare AI. I've worked across startups and health tech as well as corporates in this space from an operational standpoint and a strategic standpoint. And Luca, our third co-founder, has a PhD in medical genetics, focuses on validating our machine learning algorithms from a medical perspective, and also has experience in the commercial side of healthcare, previously working at a top 3 pharma company. We've worked together previously, which I think has allowed us to weather the storm of the COVID pandemic and really unite with a common purpose to address these patient challenges and work as an energized and united team. Our journey so far towards our vision to improve the patient experience started a couple of years ago, and we've worked very deeply since 2018 to create the natural language processing algorithms. We also participated in a number of startup programs with Google and NVIDIA. Over the last year of 2020 so far, we've also joined a number of other programs, including Building Bridges, which has been fantastic, and received a number of equity-free grants and awards to develop, in particular, a COVID-19 solution. We've scaled to 13 indications across oncology in addition to coronavirus. And our next step is really to focus on the customer validation. So we have 3 pilots set up in 3 different countries with hospitals. We're strengthening our patient organization collaborations and also partnerships that we're forming with other companies who can API into our platform. We'll also be launching additional platform components, expanding our geographic reach, and seeking hopefully seed investment in the coming months as well. So thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about the work we're doing, and I'd love to connect if anyone's interested in improving patient centricity in healthcare using AI.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Oh, here we go. Emily, thanks for the presentation. It's Jan here. The first question I have: who's paying for what, and how are you going to make money and your investors, your potential investors, happy? And what's the time frame? 3 questions.
Sure. Yeah, so we have a number of customer targets in mind. So the main ones would be hospitals and or physicians in the community, oncology settings specifically, and also with CROs, so the clinical research organizations providing services to pharmaceutical companies and biotechs. So those would be the kind of first customers we envision over the coming year. We're already providing services to pharmaceutical company on clinical trial optimization, for example. Important for our business model is that our product is always free for patients. They're already paying, in many countries, far more than they should be for healthcare. And in the case of clinical research specifically, they're already putting their lives on the line for research. So our service is always free for them. And instead, we work to bring efficiencies to other parts of the healthcare ecosystem by speeding up timeframes, for example, or improving efficiency of communication.
You didn't answer my last question in regards to how are you going to make your investors happy. So did I get that right? You basically the, let's say, pharma companies, CROs are paying you for you to open the doors to potential recruits of their clinical trials. Is that correct? And they'll be paying for that.
Yeah, so recruitment is one aspect. Our platform is actually kind of broader beyond clinical trials as well, across the patient experience on trials, but also during the treatment phase. We actually don't have investors, so we're completely bootstrapped so far. We are looking to raise seed rounds, though, probably at the end of this year. So right now we don't have to keep anyone happy except for our kind of initial customers, which again, our first customers are hospitals and CROs.
All right, great. One more question, then I'm done. In regards to competition, I'm sure I could imagine that this kind of, let's say, service that you provide is that other companies are also looking into this to facilitate the interaction between the involved parties. Can you say something to that?
Yeah, definitely. We're not alone in this space. So it depends on kind of whether you're looking specifically at trial recruitment or on digital trials or on telemedicine. There are many aspects kind of to the work that we're doing, but at the core of our vision is the AI approach, and that's really the competitive edge. So what we found is we tried early on to use kind of off-the-shelf ontologies to solve some of the problems that we're looking at. So SNOMED, MESH, these kind of medical ontologies, and they're not suited specifically to the clinical trial space or to translate the kind of information that we're bringing NLP to. This is because clinical medicine is a blend of scientific information, medical information, and it also needs to be kind of friendly enough to communicate to patients. So we've really built from the ground up our own ontologies that can address these problems using AI.
Thank you.
there's not any more questions? One? Okay.
Hi, my name is Ben. First of all, I've seen My Tomorrows, which seems to be very similar, and I like the page actually, so I think it's one of the best ones if you're looking for, let's say, alternative treatment options you have. But at this stage, when you're already, unfortunately, deep into your, let's say, personal tragedy or your disease, you're probably an expert, so why would you need a, let's say, natural language processing platform to translate your language into medical language if you're already proficient enough in medical language, which I assume?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty big assumption, and I disagree with it slightly. So I had a call actually last week with a nurse in the US who has breast cancer and is an oncology nurse, and she was telling me that another nurse she knows got breast cancer, and she asked, what kind of breast cancer do you have, meaning the genetic mutation, and this healthcare professional actually didn't even know that. So I think medicine is becoming much more complex in terms of the genetic mutations, the precision medicine that's available, and it's very hard even for professionals to keep up with. So I definitely think there's a need to better communicate and explain this information both to patients and to doctors. In terms of My Tomorrows, again, I think the core of our offering is the speed and scalability of it because it uses AI. So I invite you to check out our questionnaire on our website, and I'm happy to talk further about the specific differentiators, but really we're able to expand quickly to different indications in a matter of kind of 2 weeks on average to add a new therapy area, for example, COVID-19. And so this is how we plan to kind of tackle more broadly the treatment areas that have high unmet needs.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emily. One last round of applause for Emily, please.
Thank you.
Next from Remisio, we'd like to welcome Elzbieta. Are you online to join us? Give us 1 second. Okay, so maybe we'll try to come back in that case to the team from Remisio. So then, moving steadily along, we have from Visiro Pirman, who's joining us in person. Amazing. So we will invite him to the stage.
I brought something with me. So. Can you remove the iPhone update? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So hi, good evening. My name is Pirmin. I'm co-founder of Visiro, and the number of elderly people is increasing all over the world. It's a global problem, and we cannot solve this problem with more and more caregivers. So we had a closer look in elderly care, and we found 3 major problems. First is health. There's a lack of data to provide dignified healthcare for elderly people. Second is everyday safety. 98% of elderly people want to live at home as long as possible, but current solutions do not fit their needs. And third is care. We have a lack of caregivers, we have missing caregivers all over the world, and we need new innovative ways to support them. And here's our solution. We want to move from today's hospital-centered sick care system to community-based and integrated healthcare of tomorrow. And this is a problem that is relevant to everyone worldwide. Think about your elderly relatives. So why is there no solution today? Because we have a lack of data, especially from the elderly people. And why is this? Because there is no adherence to current medical interventions. Cameras, smartwatches, alarm buttons, they either make them feel intrusive, they are too complex to use, or what is most likely, they simply forget to use them. And here we thought we watched elderly people and we saw what they were doing over and over again. Each day, 8 hours, they were sitting like the audience right now. And so we found a solution to integrate sensors into seats to monitor their health and predict how the health condition changes. The service is connected to elderlies, to the relatives, to the patients, and to the nurses. And we are measuring different vital signs by just sitting down, like heart rate, respiration. Soon we will also have the blood pressure. And we are analyzing this data with AI technology. And by doing this, we can decrease the costs of care with way more efficient treatments and less emergencies, while we are tremendously increasing the quality of care for the patient. The market we're targeting with this is the Internet of Medical Things market. And this market will have the same incredible growth as the IoT market has in the past 5 years. And we are going to be the leader in this market because we are the first ever to integrate sensors into chairs. We are the first ever to build an AI platform to analyze this big data. And we are the first ever to build a platform to predict health deviations and provide recommendations for the caregivers. We are not building furnitures and seat cushions. We are working with leading furniture manufacturers and care suppliers together to provide healthcare, and we started in Norway. Our business model has 2 revenue streams. The first and most important is the care as a service, which is a monthly revenue. And the second one is the license of the patented technology to the furniture manufacturers. Our entire team is driven by the experience they had in their personal life with their elderly family members. Our CTO, Janek, and me are engineers by heart, and I've worked for Philips and Fraunhofer in the past and did my research. Our senior data scientist, Darren, did his PhD at UCL, and our business developer, Anastasia, is very experienced from her work in the telecommunication industry. We're now looking for an investment to become the leader in data-based integrated care. And to close my pitch, I want to show you how easy it is to use our product. So you just take the seat cushion, put it on a chair, and then sit down. That's it. Thank you very much.
Pyrian, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Quick question: how long do you have to sit on that cushion before you have meaningful data?
10 seconds.
Okay. And who receives the information? I wasn't really clear on who sits on the other end and looks at the information.
So
the output.
So we start with the relatives we're targeting. So you are looking for the data of your mom or your sister, for example. And because the elderly people, they have it on their chair, they don't have to care. It's the relative who receives the data. And then in a second step, we also connect it to the caregivers and to the doctors. And then, yeah.
So how does the data gets translated to like an analysis where maybe the parents can do something with this? How do they know when to do what?
You have an application for this. So the seat cushion is connected to the internet. We have the cloud service, which analyzes also the data. So you see a prediction how health condition changes. We are analyzing stress, for example, well-being. And all those informations you can see in the application.
Okay.
I can give a short demo afterwards. When we go for the beers, then I'll set it up here.
Awesome.
Looking forward to that. You mentioned smartwatches and all this, and apparently people are not compliant with that. Wouldn't you imagine that that this can change? You just hang a sensor around your neck or something of your grandmother and wait what happens. So would you get more information and easier than having the cushion here? Or I'm sure you've did your research in that regard.
Yeah. So maybe comment on the problems. So smartwatches or other devices you wear, you have to charge them, you have to actively use them, and you have to actually have them somehow integrated into the daily life. So it changes something. So even if it's something you hang around your neck or your wrist or something like this, you have to do it. But if there is a solution which overcomes those problems, our strategy is to have the analytics set up. So the data, if the data is the same, then we are the ones who already have a trained system which can detect the health deviations, because today we are the only ones who can actually provide this kind of data for this specific target group.
Last question, how much do you charge for your service?
So for the service is around 20 euros per month.
Okay.
Just maybe one question on
Yeah.
the business model. Who would pay for the care as a service? And then the second question is, do you see the care as a service or the technology license as the bigger revenue stream?
So the question was who pays for the care as a service, and the second one, which is the more important revenue, the care as a service or technology. The answer for the first question is we have a business model where we start with a self-payer, which means that the elderly people, well, the relatives pay for it. So we distinguish between customer, user, and payer. And later on, we want to get into the reimbursement of the health insurances as a payer, but we're focusing right now on self-payers only. Which works, and I mentioned this, not best in Germany, but in the Scandinavian region and Netherlands, we already have very good traction with this approach. And we see the second question, we see the monthly revenue as the way bigger opportunity to grow, and that's also because, well, this is the door opener to into the data space, and the analytics of the data is the actual value that we provide. And this also answers the question maybe concerning other devices which can be integrated into our platform. Oh, more questions, please. Yeah. You need a mic, or I can repeat the questions otherwise. Yeah.
First is regarding the recommendations, recommendations, what to do and what to potentially change in the life of the elderly people derived from the data you get, and how validated these recommendations are, that they really can make an improvement in order to justify the price you're asking for. The second question is going into the direction of data accuracy. So for example, an elderly person is not completely alone, but gets some visit from time to time, or maybe regularly from a neighbor to play cards or whatever. And the heart insufficient neighbor used to sit on that because it has a nice look outside, or the host can have a better look into the cards of his neighbor. Or for example, it's nicely positioned in front of the TV, and before you go watching TV, you go into the cellar, have a beer, and your heart rate is elevated from climbing the stairs. Something like that. So how can your AI eliminate these artificial data in order to guarantee data accuracy?
Okay, so the question was concerning different opportunities or different situations where the data might be different to other circumstances of the patient, but also how can we avoid that the cushion is not measuring the wrong person. Okay, so concerning the first part, which is the situation, the cushion gets to know you. So it is that the cushion learns your habits, and the cushion also learns your body, basically. So it takes something like 24 hours of sitting time, which you need until the cushion actually knows your conditions, and then it can see if there are deviations within this. Other than that, we also take into account public data and environmental data, which means, for example, on a hot summer day, that your vitals are also different than, for example, if it's cold or something like this. And we can distinguish right now between kids or like pets which are sitting, like a dog which is sitting on the cushion, but not between specific persons. For our use cases so far, this was never a problem because there is mostly one chair which is dedicated to a single person. We have two solutions for this. One is that we have an RFID chip, which is not very cool solution, but a very easy solution, which we already tested and we can implement very fast. And the second one we're working on is that we are looking for something like similar to a fingerprint within the heart rate data, so that we can see who is sitting there, and then we can detect this. But this is still under development. But this will be the long-term solution. Yeah. Please?
Sorry, if I may ask another question?
Yes. Or, I don't know, I'm not the timekeeper. One short question.
Very short, and I have to repeat that I'm a shareholder and the co-founder of PGDE, which is the biggest ELECA platform.
Yeah.
We know it. And personal emergency response systems, as it's called, Hausen in
Yeah.
Berlin, has been or still is one of the biggest business lines. So we have been getting our heads around all those different solutions for active and passive sensors and things like that. And I have to say that there have been many solutions around with passive sensors. By the way, anecdotically speaking, what's statistically the most telling signal for somebody to have a health crisis or even being dead is if this person doesn't switch on his TV at a certain time in the day, you know. So statistically just kidding, but it's true.
Yeah, well,
Now,
those are those routines, yeah.
the question is now,
Yeah.
also in other countries, not just Germany, it has always been very difficult to have a propensity to pay, privately pay for such solutions, you know. And sometimes you install sensors, for instance, in the oven or in some other appliances in Europe or stuff like that. So it could be easy, cheap, even cheaper solutions than yours. So in the elder care market, how do you want to differentiate yourself in order to overcome this hurdle, which I've seen many, many times? And I completely agree with you. We need new solutions because this button you have to push does not serve the purpose, because people are mostly demented, so they forget or they don't want to push the button and stuff like that. So it's really crazy what's going on in the market, but the solution has not been found yet. And I'm still critical whether you will solve this problem, but maybe you can give me an idea.
Well, in first place, it is that part of adherence, so that they are actually using it. So for example, the buttons you mentioned, like 100% are buying it, or not 100%, but most people are buying such a button, but only in 8% of the cases this is really used as it is intended to be. So meaning that the person is always having the button with them in case there is an emergency. So 92% of the cases the button is lying around somewhere. And our business model is based on a monthly revenue. And we actually give them monthly also a benefit of it. So they can see in these applications how they change, how their health condition change, and they have an interaction with the device. And it's now it's relatives who have an interaction, but we also have some test users in Germany who are paying us for this, who want to see their data and who want to see how it changed. And so we have an interaction approach with the data, and this is how we are different than a button where you only have an interaction in case of an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll give you just 1 minute to pack up. So we have our very last pitch joining us online. So if we could please get Zoom back. We have Laura from Villa Health joining us. Hi, Laura. Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Can
Perfect.
you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay.
Amazing, Laura. So please go ahead and begin your pitch. Thank you.
So, do you also see my screen by now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Kotzig, co-founder of CEO and Villa Health. I'm very happy to be here, also only digitally, but I'm sure this will work. So, what is Villa doing? We are developing a digital therapeutics platform for the prevention of mental comorbidities in chronic disease patients. And why are we doing that? At least 1/3 of all patients living with a physical chronic illness additionally develop psychological disorders, such as depression, for example, on top of the primary physical illness. Still, so far after the diagnosis and besides medical treatment to the doctor, patients are currently released into life with a lifelong disease without any psychosocial support. And maybe you can imagine this for yourself.
Laura? Hi,
Yeah.
sorry, Laura, I'm going to stop you. It's getting harder and harder to hear you. I wonder if you could go without the headphones?
Without,
better,
you won't hear anything, but I put it in front of my mouth maybe.
Put it, yeah, that would be perfect. Amazing. Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Good. And yeah, maybe you can imagine this for yourself. While your friends are making plans about building a house or starting a family, you might just receive the diagnosis of something that you did not want, that will never go away, and that from now on will lead to serious limitations and adjustments for the rest of your life. So if additional mental problems develop as a result, this leads to an additional tragic loss of quality of life for the patients themselves, further to a significantly increased non-adherence to treatment regimes and healthy behaviors, and as a result to an additional cost burden in the billions. This is currently not being addressed, as the provision of preventative psychological care for every chronically ill person is just not feasible and affordable for any healthcare system in the world. And that is why Villa is working on providing smart digital and scalable support to prevent mental comorbidities right from the start. And this is why we have developed a cloud-based web app solution that supports and accompanies people living with a physical chronic disease early on their patient journey. It uses a conversation interface to guide the user through short, targeted, and very interactive conversations that provide step-by-step professional guidance and support with a very specific psychosocial challenges of living with lifelong disease. And these are very pleasant and gamified interactions that naturally and flexibly become part of people's lives and ultimately form a journey towards mental well-being despite having a physical illness. And we are currently focusing on the chronic inflammatory and autoimmune spectrum of diseases. This includes over 100 different diseases. Some of the larger ones, for example, are multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, or rheumatoid arthritis, and are in total affecting roughly 6 million people in Germany alone. And Villa was co-created with chronic disease patients from the start, is currently available in an open version used by hundreds of patients that are already supported with 40 different diseases. And our users wish there would have always been an app like this, feel totally recognized, and would like to see us in every doctor's office in the world. And the good thing is, in Germany, exactly this is now possible. The recently changed legal environment makes it possible to be prescribed directly by a doctor and reimbursed by insurance companies as a digital health application. And Vila can thus be made available as app on prescription to millions of people. And this is exactly our goal. And this is us, the core team. I have a background in business administration and worked for large strategy consulting firm before. Pavel, as a CTO, is an experienced product builder and full stack developer, as well as Julia, clinical psychologist, psychotherapist, and also rheumatoid arthritis patient herself. And we are busy working on our mission, which is everyone in Germany diagnosed with a chronic disease will not only receive medical treatment, but also at the same time the prescription for Vila from the doctor, which will guide and support him or her psychologically in life with illness. And yeah, that's it for now from me. Very happy to answer any questions now.
Laura, this is Jan. Thanks for the presentation. Again, I have the money focused questions. So, how much do you charge for the service?
Yeah, so this will depend on negotiations with the insurance companies in the end, but we are calculating with the reimbursement price.
Sorry, you're really hard to understand. Could you? Yeah, sorry for that.
This will depend on the. Depends on the outcome of negotiations with insurance companies, but we are calculating the reimbursement price of 150 euros.
So, do I understand it right? So, once you are diagnosed with a chronic disease, your vision, let's say, is that you automatically get a prescription with your company for your product. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now. How about competition? I think this is probably a hot area in general. So how do you see yourself with whatever competitors and having the vision to be the one being prescribed to all those guys that you mentioned before?
So I mean, there are a lot of solutions out there focusing on mental health and mental illness. So for us, we are focusing on people that have a primarily physical illness, that are just left alone with their mental health, which does not mean they have a mental disease yet that needs to be treated. Yeah, so this is the most differentiating factor from our point of view.
That's what I was wondering. So, okay, you're diagnosed with some cancer, and you at this stage you don't know about all the comorbidities that might show up. So it's going to be your physician that says, well, you got to talk to those guys and use that app, because until I notice it, it's probably be some time until I'm deeply depressed. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the doctor probably shouldn't say, no, you have this disease, and be careful to not also get depressed in addition. Just, hey, here's something that you can ask all the questions you might have that you can't ask me, because we can only talk about medical topics and so on. So it's everything in the psychosocial space, and which, yes, in the end, it prevents, hopefully, mental illness on top.
One last question. I saw on the quotes that you listed there, most people were somewhere between 20 and 45 or so. What's I mean, I'd say many of the chronic diseases show up probably later in life. So what's right now the spread of that you have there age-wise, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so we are focusing on a chronic inflammatory autoimmune spectrum of diseases, and this is a spectrum which where the age of onset is usually in the middle of life, like around 30, 35. And our current user base is between 16 and 65.
Okay,
fully in the range of what we want to cover.
All right, thank you.
Maybe I just jump in with one question before. Sorry, this is Frank. Hi. I was wondering a bit more from a medical perspective. Is this supposed to really replace like the therapy, or is it rather kind of a matter of distraction for the patients? And the second part of this question is, if it's supposed to replace some kind of a therapy, how do you measure the outcome really of your success?
So it for sure is not supposed to replace medical therapy. This is the other side of the topic, so to say. It should prevent psychotherapy that might be needed if the additional illness develops on top. But if there is already a mental disease, we do not aim to replace it. This is not our focus.
Okay, so and my second part was: is it rather is there any means of outcome measurement really of your success, or how do you determine your success, or is it just a subjective point of view of your customers?
We measure success in clinically also in the increase of quality of life of patients. There are standardized questionnaires with which you can measure this.
Thank you.
So, Peter, thank you for taking my question. At least the first one has been already answered because it has been asked by Dr. Baier. The second question is, how do you compare yourself to the service offering of pharmaceutical companies that sell the chronically used drugs in these diseases like morbus Crohn that you mentioned for one anecdotal patient, or multiple sclerosis? They all have some services programs all over the world, at least in Western countries, where they at least offer some support, at least as long as the patient is taking, let's say, Copaxone or alpha interferon from whatever company. And the second question is, do you limit yourself to Germany? I think the need is even higher in other countries, even in Europe, and it should be easy to just translate it into, I don't know, whatever interesting language.
Yeah. So regarding your first question, so far from what I have seen from these patient support programs that you mentioned, obviously I don't know all of them, but the ones I've seen, they don't go deep or very deep into the psychosocial part. Yeah, there might be some articles, some blog posts and so on, but it's not the level that we want to provide, which is equipping the patient with a comprehensive tool set for really living a mentally healthy life besides disease. So I see us far more comprehensive because we're only focused on that, and also more patient and human-centric in the end. Regarding our second question, yes, Bila was always meant to be an international product, which can be easily scaled in different languages. And we are currently focusing on the German version, but definitely future plans also involve other languages and markets.
Perfect. And then if there are no more questions, Laura, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, so that's all the teams that we have pitching today. Thank you guys so much for joining. It was great to have you back in person, and it was also, I'll just jump out so people can see me online. It was great to have you online. Thanks, everyone, and thanks again to our amazing panel for having this conversation with us about how does a health tech startup succeed in these very interesting times. With that, we'd like to send you along your way. Please check out more events from Factory. You can see them online at our website at factoryberlin.com. If you have any questions, feel free to run by me and say hello, and I'm happy to answer them. Thank you so much.